this is the default cube. First thing we want to do is get into front view. Keep it in orthographic view because we're going to be manipulating only in dimensions. To start out, we can clear the standard cube, hit X, and then it'll delete what's there. Now we're just going to go to Shift A, add the image, add some reference. Okay, so we are going to do 3 iterations of this process. The first one is the simplest. It's just a puppet that's made out of one mesh, no subcomponents. We're going to move on to a segmented puppet from one texture, and then we're going to move on to a segmented puppet constructed from multiple layers, which are atlas. So this is just the simple way, and that will get us familiar with the basics of the workflow. Make sure your cursor, this little circle, is at the origin. Now if you hit Shift A to add again, we're going to see just a plain. Hit Tab, go into edit mode. Okay, now the next thing, I have it set up so that I hit space. I can search for commands. You might have to hit F3 on your keyboard, but hit space and type merge. And take the first option, collapse. And then take the plane and turn it into one single point. Again, with that point selected, hit G to grab, and we're going to line it up with the beginning of where we're going to start trace our mesh. One thing to note, the plane, so just watch this. If I make a triangle out of this plane, here's something you need to do. This is going to help us later on. So Unity has something called backface calling. Blender doesn't call backfaces by default. So you can end up in a situation where you've got a model that looks okay in Blender, but it doesn't. It's because some of your faces are backwards. If you go over here, the show overlays, just tick this off, face orientation. If it's purple, you're good. If it's red, it means your face is backwards relative to the camera. So if it is red, all you have to do is space flip. So X to delete, enter. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is when you have a vertex selected, just hit E to extrude. And we're going to trace out all the way along the outline of this character right here. Try to space the vertices more or less evenly. You don't have to be precise, and we'll see why in a little bit. But this is not. This is more about getting a rough outline of the texture and then positioning the texture. That's going to happen later on. Right now, I'm just going to keep tracing. And I'm just hitting E and clicking to extrude. In earlier versions of Blender, you could hold Control and just click and that would extrude. I'm on a Mac, I was on Windows before. It doesn't seem to work anymore. So for now, you just have to hit E. As we make our way up, actually, I'm going to speed up a little bit. I'm going to get less accurate. Again, this is a demo. The precision isn't the most important thing. And the other thing to note is the thing I said about spacing vertices evenly. Actually, if this step doesn't apply, that'll come in later when we add a grid mesh. So we're going to have the outline of a mesh, but we need to fill it in with nicer detail. So basically the goal is we have this outline and we're going to have a grid kind of with us in the background. And we're going to constrain the grid to the outline of our character. And we're going to have a nice uniform set of vertices that we can deform with bones. But the character itself doesn't need, the outline itself doesn't need to be super uniform. Then I'm rushing a little bit just because this is a demo. We've got 3 other examples to get through. And again, this is going to look decent as long as you're roughly aligned with the contours of your target. So we're almost done. And here's where the pattern changes. We're not going to tap E to extrude anymore. We're going to come close to closing the mesh. Now hit Shift, drag, and now F. Like you want to straighten it out a little bit. Okay, now if we did our job right, zoom out, see there's points all around Finland. Hit space, not space, hit A. These are all of our vertices. Now hit F. Again, the mesh should be purple, not red. If it's red, you need to hit space, flip your normals. Okay, so now what you have to do is if you scroll around, you're going to notice it's going to be flat. See how it's sideways backwards? We're going to apply something called a modifier. And typically the solidify modifier. What this is going to do is give some thickness to our example. This is important because when we use this guy to constrain our quad grid moment, the Boolean operation is only going to work if we have thickness. That's what this is for. Just leave that alone for now. One other thing is the default cube in Blender is 2 meters by 2 meters. Blender maintains this scale. Okay, so I made a mistake. What it was is I was in some edit mode. When I added the cube, I added it as a set of vertices to the existing mesh. That's a mistake. Okay, leave edit mode. Make sure you're in object mode. Shift C. Zoom back in. All right. Make sure you're in object mode. Shift A. Cube. This cube is 2 meters by 2 meters. So that scale is preserved when you took these assets into Unity. Currently, in here, is about 5 meters tall, far too tall. What we're going to do, scale him way down. We're going to hide the reference, H. Oop. Click the cube, we don't need the cube anymore. Delete. Here's the moment where we construct our quad grid, which is important for getting good bone deformation. We're going to go Shift A, mesh, grid. Right now it's rotated the wrong way, so go down here. Rotate on the x-axis by positive 90 degrees. If you rotate by negative 90 degrees, quad will be red. We don't want that. We want it to be purple. Okay. Need it to be a little bit bigger than 2 meters. G to grab. Perfect. So hit tab. There is our geometry. So we actually need this to be a little bit higher resolution to get good definition. Hit space, type subdivide. And I'm going to do this one more time. Subdivide. All right. Now, here's the bit that's a little bit magic. Tab to exit edit mode.
Today I see it.
With grid selector, we're going to rename this plane. So, take your mesh grid, go to modifiers, select Boolean operator. Don't do difference, do intersection. Take the picker for objects, click on outline. So what just happened? If I hide the outline, did I do this wrong or no? Did I delete my solidify modifier? I did. Okay, so somehow modifier from before, solidify, I think when I was undoing the cube, I lost it. Make sure you remove the offset, that's important. You can leave this thickness as is. Increase it a little if you want. Okay, I'll go back to pen, outline. Yeah, now if I hide the outline, looks like nothing happened. That's because the tab, you'll see the grid is still there. The Boolean operator is cutting away all the vertices that are extraneous and outside of the grid. What we need to do is we need to apply modifier. Now if we tab into edit mode again, you're going to see that now we have all of this quad geometry. And this is pretty good. There's only one more thing we need to do. If you zoom in, place like here, you can see that there's a lot of vertices which are very close together on that kind of addendum. So we can clean that up. We're going to do that by hitting space and do merge. This time not collapse, go to by distance. Now at present, the filter here is too tiny, so we're going to up it. Now it's considerably simpler. If you keep upping it, you'll see the quality of the mesh starts to degrade. So the balance here is to clean things without losing too much fidelity. Okay, but now you'll notice we're running into some problems. You'll see that some of these faces are now flipped in weird ways. What you need to do, hit A, zoom out, face, type recalculate outside normals. And I fixed some of them, but not all of them. Now what you'll notice is we have some faces which are duplicating. Now there's Z fighting right here. So in this instance, you're going to want to do if you look on the back, uh-oh, that's not good. Hit A, hit X, only faces. That's hollow. Hit A again, does everything with F. Worked for the most part. We'll see there's a couple of tiny problems. What you can do is start to go in, manually resolve some of this stuff, which is last resort. Generally don't want to have to do that. maximum selected. You want face selection. You see, this face is conflicting another face. As is this face. This is a case where we can merge the distance. Zoom way in. Let's see this guy right here on the edge. Okay. So, F to fill. These last two right here, just delete them. You can see we've got a loose edge. Same thing is going to be happening over here. This can actually help. We can do something called dissolve. Limited dissolve. That's better. Okay. Still not ideal. But we fixed it somewhat. Caveat being now we've sort of corrupted the geometry here, but that's okay. We select these faces. You can triangulate. Provide. Okay, last little bit of the mesh that's problematic. Okay, now we've got mostly clean mesh. Now we need the texture. So we go here, come up to this corner, drag it out, click and drag. Go from object mode, go from viewport mode to UV edit. I'm going to open the original thing. So click this. I'm going to do a slight problem, which is that this image is not a square. So ideally, you want your UV texture to be sum power 2 square image. This is okay though. We're going to have to play with UVs a little bit. So go here. Our thin mesh, when selected, material, making a new material. This color, image texture. Okay. Here's what we got to do. Over here, tab into edit mode. A, select everything. U, unwrap. Project from view. Go into here. There is our thin. Hit A. S to scale. Way up. There you have it. So now we're at a point where we can turn off the overlay. So go back into your turn off this. Leave edit mode. There's a couple problems. Mostly, if you zoom in, you'll see that the geometry has gotten a little bit crooked, which is frustrating. I think it's because we had too much thickness on what we extruded, and the tracing of my outline isn't ideal. If you want the outline to look a little smoother, I don't recommend this from a performance standpoint. You click on Fin and you go to the subdivision and smooth things out somewhat. Still, I think that looks a little weird. We don't need that. At this point, we want to save. Let me see if we can fix. If we can fix the fact that this is not flat. The best way to do that, easiest way to do that, tab in edit mode, A, scale, Y. Scale, Y. Make it as thin as possible. Now we've gotten rid of that non-uniformity. Okay, we're now ready for the part of the process where we rig. Reposition Finn a little bit so that his feet line up with the ground. Okay, with the cursor still at the origin, hit Shift A, and now go down here to armature. I'll give you what's called a bone. Armatures are just collections of bones that you can manipulate. Rename this bone root. That's not so helpful in Blender, but it will be helpful later. Go into Object Data. Go to Viewport and click in front. This used to be called X-ray. It makes sure that we can see bones no matter where geometry is placed. With the armature selected, hit Tab. Now you have access to the individual bones. Hit G to grab. Moving the root bone around. Okay, you need to shrink this down significantly. Hit Shift A, so you could either do E, extrude a bone, or you can do Shift A to just add one without a parent. Hit G. There's going to be Finn's pelvis. Hit E again. It's going to be Finn's abdomen. E again. Thoracic cavity. E again. Face. Okay, Shift A. His ears. They're tiny. Shift A. More ears. We have to still parent these free-floating bones. I'll do that in a moment. All right, now we're going to draw his arms. Because this arm is overlapping, there's not a lot we can do with that. What we can do is make a bone for the backpack. Facing out laterally, Shift A again. To make the arm that we can control. This is his elbow. We do extrude. Approximately like that. Wrist bone, finger bone, thumb bone. Not that it matters. If we were being really thorough, we would give all of these names, but we're not being thorough, we're rushing. Okay, there's a rig. There's a couple problems though. If you go into what is called pose mode, you're going to notice that if we move the rig around, a lot of stuff isn't properly parented, and the mesh is not at all bound to the rig. So we need to fix that. First thing is to tidy up the parenting. The way parenting works is the last thing you select in Blender when you're undergoing a parenting operation is the thing to parent. The shift click and then do Command or Control P and then do keep offset. If you don't do that, here's what happens. It's not what you want. You want to keep bone offset instead of snapping down. Keep offset. Parent these, the head bone, keep offset. Okay. So now, let's just make sure that we have rigged things properly. Yep, that's right. That's right. And that's not right. So we have to take the hip bone, parent it to the root. Offset. Back into pose mode. Hitting R to rotate. Okay, so this origin bone is useful for something in Unity called root motion, translating the character, keeping the hip independent. Normally, you're not going to touch it. The root bone you don't touch. You only translate it. You don't rotate it. Hip bone is where we're going to do the bulk of our modification of this character. So now, in the next part of this walkthrough, we're going to show you how to do custom spinning and weighting on a bone-for-bone basis. But for now, we're going to do things quick and dirty. Go to object mode, select your mesh first, shift-click on your armature. Hit Command P, go to armature deform but with automatic weights. Okay. Now, select your armature again. Go to pose mode. This is the magic part. If you've done everything right, be able to bend again. Now, clearly, running into a couple issues. Weighting isn't completely correct. But this is a good starting point. The beginning of our puppet. Now we have to do something called weight painting. So in pose mode, with your mesh selected, first things first, before we do this, we need to figure out which bones are messed up. So ears have too much influence. Shouldn't bend the face that much. Head's mostly okay. Shouldn't bend the backpack that much. Backpack's alright. I'll leave that. Sternum. Bow. Sternum's alright, except for the influence on the leg. Yeah, looks like we really just need to go through bone by bone here, which is unfortunate. But also, that's what happens when you rely on some of the automated processes. This part's a bit tedious, so I'll probably time lapse through it. What you gotta do, make sure you're in pose mode. This is very confusing. With the A bone selected, go to object mode. Click on your mesh. Sorry, shift click on your mesh. Go to weight paint. Now, command click should give us bones. Now, the heat map, where it's red, that's the bone's maximal influence. Where it's blue, it's less influence. So to remove influence, click right here, go to subtract, scale up, paint it away. F changes the radius of your brush. So go to light one. Oh boy, that's too much strength, but also I'll accept it for now. So command click. Same story. It should be hold shift. You can get rid of stuff. Doesn't look like it. So go to subtract F figure. none of that. So we are literally taking individual vertices right now and assigning them values. Command click the head. It's fine. We got where we needed to be. Save your work. Always remember to save your work. Tab out. Go back to object mode. Select your armature. Go to close mode. Now, there's a little bit of glitching, but on the whole, this is much better than the automatic results. There's still obviously some things that need tweaking. But this is fairly good. We can more or less start to begin posing. You can see some bones are fighting over influence right now. One thing you can do is you can leave these offsets in place. And then when you go back, make your edits to the bone weighting. This is actually maintained. You can see there's quite a number of problems still when we do extreme deformations. This won't happen if you map things with layers. This is mostly because we're trying to do this as one big mesh. So the layer approach that I'll show you soon is one way to mitigate this sort of problem. Back to object mode. Remember, select armature first, shift click into the mesh, the weight pin. Okay, so we've got straggler vertices basically. And that is what is causing these problems. So let's say we are actually about where we need to be. Okay. Go back to object mode, like the armature. Pose mode. If you ever need to clear a transform, hit A. Type clear transform all. Go back to where you started. Now we're ready to start animating. You can close this UV editor. Gotta go up here, drag. Go down here, drag up. Change this to what's called a dope sheet. Up here, zoom out and down. We actually want what's called the action editor. So actions are the usable clips of animation. Here's something a little bit confusing. Dope sheet and the newest version of Blender doesn't let you tweak aspects of the timeline. So drag down, drag up, head on over to timeline. What we need is this over here, the start and end. Basically, we're going to make an animation where Finn is waving on a loop for 1 second. You can either play here or you can hit Shift, place. This is if you've got the space to open tools configured. There's 2 ways to do keyframing. One is auto keying. You click that, and now any motions you make are recorded into the dope sheet. It's good to have on, but to start, what I actually like to do is hit A, So the start of the animation, in my opinion, is usually best set to the extreme of the pose. So I'm going to bend the hand a little bit. Hit A to select every single bone. You don't have to do this every time. This is practice. Begin with hit I for insert, for the location, rotation, and scale. Now down here, you can duplicate keyframes. Shift D. Drag. Be just outside the timeline. Now if you shift play, now here drag to the middle. It'll be very, very simple. Hit R. Now this is where turn on keyframing, auto keyframing. Go, shift play. Very, very simple animation. That's it. You could say you're done there, but what's useful is a little bit of scrubbing, G to grab. You can have him wave his hand a bunch. Very quickly. You can also use the curve editor to play with some of this stuff. One thing I'm doing wrong is editing just one bone at a time. So select all of these bones right here. Take a look at where their frames are. You can see that the bend is not going quite right. But that's all right. One thing you can do to make the jump look a little less terrible do a little bit of follow through with the hands. Better. Still not good, but better. You can tell I'm not an animator. I didn't flap at any key poses. When my animations do look tolerable, it's because of key poses. So the one thing is name this. Name it wave. Just to show you that it's possible, click here, make another action. Name it big wave. Hit A, take all of your keyframes, hit X, delete. Hit 0, set your initial pose. I want him to go ham. Not sure how he ended up with 2, but save. Now, take everything inside his armature. Go back to object mode. Zoom out. Click and drag all of this. Save. File. Export. FBX is important. Only selected objects. And there you go. Now, we're done. We're done with Blender.